Imagine sitting in a dim room with nothing, my journal, no phone, Spotify, study playlist, no productive background noise. I know that doesn't sound like much, but for a brain like mine, an ADHD brain that physically cannot sit in silence without immediately reaching for stimulation, this was almost possible. And believe it or not, this week gave me the most lock-in, clear, and present I've felt in my entire. But the trick isn't the dark room, not the journal. It's about what I stopped doing. Because here's what nobody tells you about ADHD and focus is that our mental bandwidth, the actual brain finite capacity to hold and process attention, gets eaten alive by 100 small inputs before open a textbook. This week I ran an experiment on myself. 5 days, one rule. Let's take you through it. Monday, MCB exam, 11 days. I've been telling myself for 2 weeks that I'm about to lock in, and I haven't locked in yet. Not really. So here's the experiment. For the entirety of this week, every time I sit down to study, I'm only allowed to work on one thing. One chapter, one subject, one lecture. No switching between orgo and psych and econ. No productive multitasking. One container. And if I don't feel like being in that container, my only option is to sit in silence. Task or nothing. I've been using something I call destimulation for a while now, reducing sensory input to give the brain room to breathe. I've been doing it in half measures, lightly dimmed lights, a lo-fi playlist, kind of focused. I never went all the way. This week, I went all the way. Day one was honestly rough. The first thing I noticed wasn't focus. It was how loud everything got when I removed the inputs. My brain immediately started generating alternative tasks. Wait, did I reply to that email? Should I check on my grade that was posted? I could just look on my phone for like literally 2 seconds. And this is actually what neuroscience predicts. When you have ADHD, the prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for working memory and impulse control, runs on a lower dopamine baseline. So when you remove your external stimulation, the brain doesn't go quiet, it just gets louder. It starts hunting for dopamine from inside, dopamine seeking behavior, and it makes task or nothing feel nearly impossible. I lasted about 40 minutes before I ended up picking phone. Not scroll, just check one thing. And here's what I noticed. Even after I put it down, my brain didn't return to the chapter. It stayed on the thing I've just seen. The unread message, the numbers, the notification I've mentally filed as like unresolved. Those things don't leave when you put your phone down. They stay and they take up space. But here's what surprised me about Monday evening. After studying hours were over, after I technically failed the experiment a little, I sat down with my leather journal and I wrote 3 pages without planning to. Not because I felt productive or anything, just because there were finally space for it, and that was interesting. Tuesday, I woke up kind of nervous. Monday wasn't perfect, and I knew today had more writing on it. But something was different about Tuesday morning. I don't know how to describe it except my head was quieter. It was not like 10 people speaking at the same time. Like, it was not completely quiet. The volume was just lower. This is actually documented research. Dr. Russell describes ADHD as a working memory bandwidth problem. Our brain can only hold a limited number of active threads at once, and every unresolved input competes for that bandwidth. When you reduce inputs over time, threads start closing. And for the first time, I sat down and I just started. No warm up, no getting into it. 8 a.m. 4 hours later, I looked up and it was new. And I said out loud, oh, I see. The INCUP method: interest, novelty, challenge, urgency, passion. These are the 5 neurological activators for an ADHD brain. Usually I'm trying to manufacture it all externally. Music for novelty, countdown for urgency, subject switching for interest. But Tuesday taught me something. When you remove everything else, the task themselves becomes the most interesting thing in the room by default. Not because you're forcing it, just because there is nothing else to compete with it. Your brain finally turns full dopamine seeking attention onto the work. Suddenly, organic chemistry reactions are the most fascinating thing I've ever seen. I read 40 pages and wanted to keep going. This is something body doubling touches on. The idea that the presence of one focused anchor, usually another person, helps the ADHD brain stay in a single task context. What I was doing was the solo version, becoming my own anchor by giving the brain no other option but the work itself. Wednesday, I was feeling something I rarely feel in the middle of a study week. Not the anxious caffeine momentum, not that I'm running out of time momentum, the calm kind, where you're not checking how much you've done because you're already doing it. And something was happening outside of studying too. My conversations felt different. When my roommate came to talk, I wasn't composing tomorrow's to-do list with nodding along. I was actually there. This is the difference between physical presence and cognitive presence. Physically, we're always somewhere. Cognitively, especially for an ADHD brain, we're almost never there. There is always something else running in the background tabs. Wednesday was the first time I actually felt that I was cognitively present, noticeably. Research from the University of London shows that task switching, even just brief mental interruptions, cost up about 40% of productive output. But for an ADHD brain, the re-engagement cost is usually higher. Our dopamine system doesn't just split attention, it abandons the context. When something new gets labeled as urgent or novel, the attention shifts entirely. The original task gets left behind. Like a browser tab you forgot about, the 50 IMC. I wrote in my journal that night, a browser with you where tabs open. If you know, you know. Okay, Thursday. I need to be honest with you. Thursday morning started well. I was on a roll. Then I needed to look up one reference for my paper, just like one thing. And while I had the browser open, I saw a notification. It was an email from one of the med school programs. One email became 3 emails. 3 emails became checking my whole application portal. The portal became Googling something else that has nothing to do with medical applications. For a 15-minute pass before I registered it. I put the phone down. I closed the tab. Told myself it was fine. For the next 2 hours, I was physically reading the Orgo chapter, but cognitively, I was somewhere else between the emails, the applications, and a question I've answered in my head and haven't resolved. I was present in my body, but I was completely absent in my brain. And this is when the experiment taught me the most important lesson. Think about your attention as a container, finite, maybe 10 units, 20 on a good day. When you sit down to study, nothing else open, all 10 units go to the task. But every additional thread you let in, email, the notification, or I wonder if I responded, takes up more units, not temporarily. They just stay. They run in the background, quietly consuming the bandwidth, even when you think you've closed them. By Thursday afternoon, I had maybe 4 units left or go. And here's what makes this so much more expensive for ADHD brains. Neurotypical brains task switch with some efficiency. Ours just can't. Our dopamine system doesn't split attention. It just relocates the attention. When a new input gets flagged as emotion relevant, the entire dopamine response pivots towards it. Reward deficiency syndrome means we're always looking for the most stimulating thing available. And an email from a med school program that is neurologically classified as extremely stimulating. So Thursday wasn't a discipline failure. It was a neurobiology lesson. Once you open the door, you can't close it again. Same day. Thread stays active. It competes. Be careful what you let in, because whatever you let in, it stays. The good news about Thursday, the failure was instructive, and I still got through the most important material before I called it. Sometimes the lesson costs you a day, and that's okay. Friday morning, I woke up and something clicked. I thought my attention was scattered before this week. Most of it going to study, some of it to life, and that's reasonable. This is what it actually looks like. By the time I sit down to study, I had maybe 2 units left. I would have a box of 10, I only have 2 left. And I was wondering why focus felt like a battle, because it was not just that I could just switch around, it was that I literally didn't have enough space. So here's the diagnosis I give you. ADHD is not a focus problem, it's a bandwidth management problem. Our brains are not broken at focusing, they're just structurally different at filtering. Our activating system, our filter for relevance, just works different. Instead of automatic block relevant input, it treats everything as potentially relevant, which means we don't need to try harder. We need to build a structural protection for our attention before we even open a textbook. That's what this week was, a structural experiment, and it worked. So here's the prescription. 4 rules I'm keeping and 1 diagnostic. Rule 1, first, focus is scattered. Whatever you work on for first gets the cleanest, fullest bandwidth. No competition. Give that slot to the hardest thing. Not email, not quick task, the hardest thing first. Rule 2. When you can't focus, reduce, don't stimulate. Every ADHD instinct says, I need more input to get going. Different playlists, switch subjects, go on TikTok for like 5 minutes every 20 minutes. The prescription, go quieter. Close a tab, dim a light, open a journal. Give the brain less to process, not more. That's destimulate. It works because it's not willpower, it's neurology. Rule 3. Pen over screen whenever possible. Screens are architecturally designed to give you more input. The leather journal gives you nothing but your own thoughts. Your own thoughts don't consume your bandwidth the way external inputs do. They generate clarity. There is a reason I kept coming back to my journal, because it's the lowest input tool I have. Rule 4. Protect the container all day. It's not enough to start clean. Midday wrenches are real. I'll just check something quickly is the most expensive lie we tell ourselves. The container doesn't reset until sleep. Be intentional about what you let in, especially the first 4 hours of your day. And the diagnostic question to ask yourself tomorrow morning before you open anything: how many threads I am already carrying? If the answer is more than 2, the unread email, the half-resolved conversation, the thing you saw before bed, your bandwidth is already compromised before you started. The awareness alone changes how you plan. This is the diagnosis. You don't have a focus problem, you have a bandwidth management problem, and nobody is teaching ADHD students how to manage it. So now we are. In the comments if you're going to try the 1 container rule this week, and if you want the full breakdown on how I structure my time containers and the complete destimulation protocol, you can see it in my past videos. Anyways, go protect your containers, and that's it for today. I hope you really enjoyed my video. If you did, please like, subscribe, and share. And if you want to hear more from me, you can watch my last video on how to do research with ADHD. And see you next time. Bye bye.